Good morning and welcome to the 10th annual Northern Virginia Housing Expo. And there's a special welcome for you for attending the first virtual Housing Expo. My name is Brandy Collins and I am a housing program manager with the Alexandria Office of Housing, and I will be your moderator today for today's session, Household Budgets and Finance. Should you have a question, feel free to submit them by selecting the Questions tab at the top right of your screen. It's a circle with a question mark on the inside. And now I will turn over our session to today's presenter, Cynthia Schnell with the Virginia Cooperative Extension Program. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thanks, Brandy. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Cynthia Schell, and I'm a volunteer with the Virginia Cooperative Extension. I've been a Master Financial Volunteer at the Cooperative Extension for about 15 years now, and I am a certified HUD housing counselor as well. I just want to say a little bit about the Virginia Cooperative Extension to start. The Virginia Cooperative Extension is a local organization that is part of the Virginia Tech. The cooperative extension was started as part of the land grant process, and the idea is that we are extending education into the community. So the cooperative extension supports programs such as Master Gardener program, 4-H program, parenting skills programs, nutritional programs, and financial education. We offer a number of different services in the county, including at the Financial Empowerment Center. We offer one-on-one counseling free that includes housing counseling, both pre and post buying a house. The first thing I want to just talk about briefly is when you're thinking about buying a house, what you want to consider. Of course, everything's tied to money. So there's a lot of reasons that might have brought you to consider buying a house. One of the things with renting now, ironically, is that it can be more expensive to rent a house than actually to pay a mortgage. When you rent a house, that's somebody else's house, and so you can be limited on things that you can do to the house, which kind of stinks. And you're tied to a lease, right? So, and furthermore, you're tied to a landlord, right? If the landlord's, son-in-law wants to move in, they may kick you out, and you don't have a lot of choice to it. But there's some good things about renting. One of the good things about renting is if something breaks, you get on the phone and you call your landlord and you say, "Landlord, I got a problem, come fix it." You are flexible, even though you are tied to a lease, you have the ability to break your lease or move out when the lease is over, and not lose a lot of money. And you usually don't have to put too much money down to get in a house. With buying, the problem with buying is you better really like what you want when you get it, because you can't easily move. You need a down payment to get in your house, and when your water heater breaks in the middle of the night, there's nobody to call other than the very expensive plumber who's going to cost you, who's going to make you pay $200 just for the privilege of him coming to you and telling you that this is going to cost you a lot of money. You can have your own yard, there may be some tax advantages, and you can make home improvements. But if you want to make home improvements, you got to pay for them, right? So it's not a matter of just calling up the landlord or the rental office and saying, "Hey, this really needs painting. It's been a while." It's like, go to Home Depot and buy some paint and do it yourself. One of the things that you should think about when you buy a house is where you want to be, because as I said, you can't, a house is a big purchase and you can't always easily get out of it, meaning sell your house. We've all been through bad markets where it's difficult to sell a house. And furthermore, when you pay all that money and get in, it takes a lot of money to get out of it. So you really want to be someplace where you can reasonably expect to be for 5 years. That just as a general rule of thumb. And So you want to make sure if you've got some life change coming, if you think you're going to change your job, or if, your child is going to start school somewhere, you really want to think about 5 years out before deciding on a location. And of course, you really need to do a reality check with prices. So there's many areas where I'd like to live, but I can't possibly afford it there because the housing prices are too high. So you really want to look in different areas and see, what's affordable, and then what's reasonable to your lifestyle and your your job and your schools and everything else that makes sense. Okay, but to get this wonderful house and to get your down payment, you need to take hold of your finances. And the best way to have control of your finances is through a spending and savings plan, or what people call a budget. And what are the important phases of doing a budget? Well, the most important phase, and people don't always think about it, is to set your goals, to understand what your goals are and work towards them. The next step is to establish and maintain your spending and savings plan. And the third is to maintain good credit, maintain your plan, re-examine your plan, adjust if necessary, and follow it moving forward. So, why do you want to have a spending plan? Why do you need a spending plan? Everything's fine. Well, the thing about a spending plan, and especially if you want to be a homeowner, or even if you are a homeowner, is that it gives you the ability to meet your goals. And when I say goals, you can have goals that are, I want to pay for my child's college education. I want to pay for my grandchild's college education. I want to pay for my education. I want to get a degree. Or I want to buy a house. I want to save for a down payment. Or it could be, I want to get a new car, or I want to have $1,000 saved in the bank. So it could be from big goals to small goals. But you need to understand those goals yourself and make sure that the plan that you develop will support these goals. The other thing about a savings plan, savings and spending plan, is that it will help you encourage new positive habits, right? So the very process of going through and thinking about your goals, developing an action plan, taking a hard look at your income and your expenses, and deciding areas that you want to change, getting this down on paper and then following it is a way for you to start changing your behavior towards supporting things that you want. And it helps keep you from moving off into the negative habits, that lovely pair of shoes that is beckoning you to buy it, or maybe going out to dinner all the time. Every time you go to spend something that's not on your spending plan, you need to think, do I really want to do this? And is this in accordance with the goals and the action plan that I've set for me? So as I've said, planning stems from goal setting. We all have things that are very important to us. But the thing that you want to make sure is, does your financial plan support what you say is important to you? If education is important to you, does your financial plan support education? If giving money to your community or to your church is important to you, is that part of your plan? If saving money or moving to a new house is part of your goals, is that part of your plan? So you want to make sure that these core values and beliefs are reflected in your plan. So your spending plan is for you. It's you telling yourself where you want your money to go. It's you deciding on what actions you want and how you're going to work to get there. This is a path for you to reach your goals. and it's also a detailed list of where the money's coming from and where it's going. To start a plan, it's easy to start a plan, but you really first have to decide that you're going to do it. There are many opportunities for you to get templates for plans. The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has some tools at consumerfinance.gov. Housing counselors have tools. If you go to HUD and search for housing counselors, you can find housing counselors who can help you. Cooperative Extension is a housing counselor that can help you for free. There are apps out there. You may have received some information from your bank or credit union that offers some resources. The only thing that I would say to be careful of is some of the apps that may call themselves free are not, because they want your personal information. So be wary of any commercial site that is offering you something that they say for free, because they may not be charging your credit card, but they may be collecting your personal financial information and using that to market. So just be wary, especially since there are many free resources, including from your certified housing counselors. Of course, you need to pick something that's going to work for you. Some people like to do everything on paper. Some people like to do everything on their phone. Some people like spreadsheets. It doesn't matter. You can do it however you want to, but you need to do something that's achievable and something that you can maintain. I mean, I had some clients who worked their way out of bankruptcy, and the way that they did it, which was easy for them because they had no credit cards, was they literally had envelopes. And in each envelope for each month, they would put what was in their plan for each month. And when the envelope was empty, that was it. So that was a very simple way of doing it, but it was an effective way of them to manage their money and move towards out of bankruptcy and towards better credit. So now creating a spending plan that works is work. You have to gather all your information. And I think that one of the things that you may discover is that you don't have all the information, or you don't know where your information is. Sometimes you can put some money in your pocket and then all of a sudden it's gone and you have no idea where it is. Well, one of the hard realities about developing a spending plan is that you need to figure out where it all goes, and you need to be honest with yourself about where it's going. And the first thing that you need to do, which I think most people can do more easily, is understand where your money's come from. If you have wages, if you have child support, if you have a job on the side, how much money is coming in. I always encourage you, if you have, a lot of my clients have regular overtime, or they have, a second job that's bringing in money. I always encourage you, if you're including that money as income, to include it on the low side. So even if you have, for example, regular overtime, just include as income your normal salaried income. Because then you can help that overtime that you get can help you take care of expenses that you might have missed, or it can help you start building your savings. Expenses is really hard. We all know the expenses that we have, such as rent or mortgage payment or car note or auto or car insurance. Those are kind of the easy expenses, I'd say, because you pay them every month. Your phone bill, you know what they are. You can look at your debit card or your credit card and see how you paid them, so you know exactly what they are. But there's other expenses, even food. I found that most people don't know how much they spend on food. And entertainingly for me, a lot of times when I have couples come in for clients, the amount that one member of the couple thinks they spend on food versus the amount the other person spends on food is never the same. And even more interestingly, I had once a couple come in and one person gave one number and the other person gave another number. Well, the reason was they were both buying food. And so they never really thought about that, putting those numbers together. And when they did, they were like, holy moly, we're spending a lot of money. But the other, and of course you want to budget the amount of money you're paying on your credit cards, and loans if you have them. But then there's kind of the everything else category. And I encourage you to use a cooperative extension or your bank or another, or a CFPB or another source to get a spending sheet that lists all possible kinds of expenses, because there may be expenses that you just don't think about. For example, personal property tax. Personal property tax comes around once a year, but when it comes, you have to pay it. Well, if you want to develop a good spending plan, you want to be planning for that throughout the year. So instead of saying in September, holy moly, how am I going to pay this bill that's due in October? You have planned for it by budgeting the money throughout the year. And so when October rolls around, it's no problem because you're able to do that. And for many of us, that's really a good practice to get into for expenses such as Christmas. I mean, a lot of people overspend on Christmas or vacations or birthdays, and then they put the money on their credit card and they spend the rest of the year paying it off. Well, that's giving the credit card company interest on your money. What you would do for a good spending plan is you put that money aside. You decide, first of all, how much you're going to spend on it, right? And stay true to that. And then budget for that money, save that money so that you can then have that money when it comes time to spend it. When you go through so what we encourage you to do is to take your monthly income and take your monthly expenses after collecting everything and going through, and that creates what we call a cash flow. And your cash flow is basically how much money you have at the end of the month. So I've listed all my income and all my expenses, and at the end, I have $200 left over. That's great. The first thing that you should do is say to yourself, do I really have $200 left over at the end of the month? Because if at the end of the month you don't have it, then there's probably something that you've missed in your expenses, or you're not being honest with yourself about what you're really spending. So if there is a surplus, then that's great. Let's figure out what to do with that money. If there's a shortfall, then you're going to have to go back and think, what expenses can I adjust? If there's a surplus, this is great. This is wonderful. Where should the extra dollars go? Savings, 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 savings. You can put them into a savings account for emergency savings, for unanticipated things. You may be planning for regular oil changes on your car, but you weren't planning on a flat tire. The emergency savings can cover things like that. You could use this surplus to help develop a more aggressive plan to pay off debt if you have debt. You may want to go through and identify credit cards that you could be paying more on, or loans that you could be paying off that you're not paying off now. You could start a college savings plan for you or for your children or grandchildren. Or, of course, you could put it in retirement. If you don't have a retirement plan, you could put it in an IRA or another type of retirement investment. But the reason why I say savings, savings, savings is because most Americans, if they had an unexpected bill, they don't have money. They don't have money saved in order to cover that bill. And so they have to go to their relatives, or they have to extend their credit in order to cover unanticipated expenses. And I think when we look and see how many Americans don't have any savings, unfortunately, most of us fall in one of those categories. And we really want, as part of your getting control of your finances, to make savings part of your financial planning. I think, unfortunately, we've all seen. I gave an example about needing a new tire, your transmission goes gaflooey, or your water heater bursts, or worse. There's lots of things that can happen, but with the pandemic, unfortunately, we see that things can happen that are completely out of your control. Not that we're puncturing our own tires, but losing your job is something that you need to be planning for, because even people, even jobs that were considered safe, like government jobs, you can be subject to furloughs and layoffs that you just don't see coming. So you really need to keep. You ideally want to keep 6 months worth of expenses in your savings. I realize that can sound like a lot of money when you're starting off, but what we say to do is start small. Start small. So work to save $100 a month. Work towards 1 month of expenses. Then work for 2 months of expenses. So you don't have to do it all at once. You don't get into financial pickles all at once, and you don't get out of them all at once. So you're not going to have your nest egg overnight. But the important thing about making a plan and articulating your goals, being very specific about what your goals are. So not, I want to save money, but I want to save $100 every month. And then after 3 months, look in your savings account. Is there $300 there? Or is there $50 there? Or is there $400 there, right? I mean, one of the things about making measurable goals for yourself is that you can then go back and see, is this working? If it's not working, if after 3 months I only have $150 in there, then I can say, well, maybe I was being a little bit ambitious with that. And so my goal is to save $50 a month. And I want, because you want to do something that you can achieve, that's going to make you feel good about it, that's going to encourage you to continue with your positive habits. Really, really strongly encourage you to have a direct deposit from your payroll that just goes to savings. Many of us have the opportunity to have multiple direct deposits from our payroll. So having, the bulk of it go to whatever your household account is, but then taking off, your $50 or $100 from each paycheck and putting it in an account that is a little bit hard to reach. So something that's an account maybe that's in a different bank, or an account, a savings account that's not tied to your checking account. It just makes it a little bit harder for you to get to that money, so that you have to think about it when you take the money out. I mean, worst comes to worst, if you're putting this money in this separate account and you need it at the end of the month, then you go and get it. But best case, you start to forget about that money. That money, because that money is not going into your household account, and so you're not seeing it for your normal expenses, and you're learning to live without it. So you're learning to live, building your savings on a little bit smaller income. I super encourage you, if you're fortunate enough to get a raise, to take that raise money and put it straight into a savings account. You've been living without it all the way up to now. Put it in your savings, and keep living without it, and start saving it. And the goal, of course, is to have 3 to 6 months of monthly expenses in your savings to cover you for unforeseeable expenses. You need to think of savings as being like your own insurance plan, right? I mean, we all have to have car insurance. If you're a homeowner, you have to have homeowners insurance. Many renters have to have renters insurance. Well, this is your living insurance, right? This is your keeping out of bad debt insurance is savings. That's what you should think of savings for. This is your self-insuring for your own financial future. If there's a shortfall, which there may be, that may be what brought you to developing a spending plan in the first place. The first thing that you want to look at is getting rid of what I say would be the easy expenses to get rid of, right? So things that you may be, and I think unfortunately with debit cards and credit cards and the way that the payments are processed electronically now, a lot of people just don't pay attention to our monthly statements, and we may be paying for the gym membership that we don't go to, or the streaming service that we thought was really cool a year ago, but we really don't watch anymore. So you really want to be scrutinizing all of those as part of good financial habits. You want to be following, you want to be examining your bank statements and your credit card statements every month to look at all these expenses and saying, is this a valid expense, but is this something that I want to keep paying?
We have one question. So in terms of savings, is that percentage of your income, is that 6 months of your gross income or 6 months of your net income?
I would say 6 months of your net income. So six months of your expenses.
Yes.
So when you look at what can be reduced, there's kind of, the cable, internet. It used to be easier to shop around for another plan. You used to be able to kind of say to Comcast, I'm going to go to Fios, you better give me a better plan. Now they're like, yeah, see ya. But perhaps you have a service that is too much for you that you could reduce. Cell phone, there's some opportunities to have prepaid plans or something that might be cheaper. Groceries is a big one that I kind of harp on. In my next slide, I'll be talking about needs versus wants. Well, obviously we all need to eat, so I'm not doubting that. But Americans waste a lot of food. And I think that when you look at groceries, you have to start thinking about being planful with what you're spending on food. If I had a client who went out and spent a lot of money on groceries at the beginning of the week, and she would make all these meals for her family, but she had older kids, and they would go out and eat with their friends, and her husband would buy lunch at work instead of packing his lunch, and she would end up throwing out a lot of food at the end of the week. And I was like, well, you're throwing away money. I mean, besides how that's wasteful, for our environment, and that is your money that you're throwing away. So you really want to be more planful about groceries, and more honest with yourself about, if I'm going out to eat every Saturday night, then I shouldn't be buying groceries for Saturday night's dinner, right? So you really want to think about that. I think perhaps the pandemic, a fortunate byproduct of our unfortunate circumstances, is that since most of us don't want to go to the grocery store all the time, we're much more planful with what we're buying, and we're thinking a lot more about what it is, so that we can reduce those trips. Also, and I speak wistfully about this, we will all be going out again, right? But for a lot of people, going out to eat is part of their entertainment. And that's fine. There's no good or bad thing about budgeting. So I'm not here to say, spend 30% on groceries and 40% on housing and, figure it out that way. You need to spend something that works for you. So for example, if your Friday evening entertainment is or will be going out to dinner, that's fine, but make a budget for it. Say, I want to go out on Friday night because, it's fun and I want to do something, but I'm not going to spend more than, $50 or $25 or whatever. And then don't, right? I mean, so that will help you live within your means. Of course, if you, another way, if you see that, you really have your expenses down to the bare bones, you can try selling things or getting a second job or, trying some other ways to make money. I think a lot of us just need to look through. I think as I look at the slide, really the answer is generally a combination of both, right? So certainly we want to have our income maximized, as much coming in as possible, but we also want to be spending as little as possible, and we want to make sure that what we're spending our money on is in accordance with our goals. So for example, if your goal is to save for a down payment for a house, then you need to be thinking about that all the time when you're thinking about adding a new expense. So the other thing, one of the things that should be on your plan, if part of your plan is that I want to, for example, pay down debt. So my goal is to buy a house, and part of my action plan to get to buying the house is to save money for a down payment and to pay down debt, right? I want to improve my credit score, right? I want my credit score, this is great. I want to have a better credit score. And I know a lot of us have apps on our phone that we could perhaps be a little obsessive about, looking at, what's my credit score today? I just have a word of caution for that. Well, I have lots of words of caution for that. But when I talk about credit scores, I talk about them like stepping on a scale. So yes, you need to step on the scale. You need to know what your weight is, and you need to maintain a good weight. But you shouldn't be stepping on the scale 3 times a day, because that's crazy. And even some people say you should only weigh yourself, once a week or something. Because if you gain 2 pounds, and it's water weight on Tuesday, then you could say, well, forget it. I'm going to go eat that box of cookies because, this diet doesn't work. Well, it's kind of the same with your credit score. Even people with really good credit scores, their credit scores goes up and down. Little things can affect your credit score, especially things related to credit cards, can make your credit score go up and down, but they're blips. They're just little blips, and they don't affect your overall credit score. So don't obsess on your credit score. The other thing, for those of you who are buying a house, is if you have an app that's showing your credit score, or your perhaps your credit card gives you a free credit score, that's not the same as the credit score that the mortgage lenders use. The mortgage lenders right now only use FICO scores. And FICO is, now I've forgotten what it stands for, but it's credit score that's owned and maintained by the FICO Corporation, and people pay for it. There's other credit scores that are owned by other companies, and you pay for them, right? So like the credit card, the Vanguard score is the score that's from the credit reporting agencies. And I bring this up because there's now a lot of competition for people selling different types of credit scores for different things. The other thing about a credit score is credit scores are created by very smart people, mathematicians, who try to look at at our behavior to figure out, because the primary goal of a lending institution is to make sure that they get their money back. So these people evaluate all sorts of data, and they make changes in how the credit scores are produced. They tweak things in order to best determine who the lender should give their money to. And that's different depending on what you're going to buy. So there's a different credit score if you're going to get an auto loan. There's a different credit score if you're going to get a house. There's a different credit score if you want to get a credit card. So there's a lot of different numbers because they take different things into account.
Excuse me, Cynthia, we have a question on the an online question. This is from a participant who has a Credit Karma account, and they've noticed that their Credit Karma score is much higher than what the score would be provided by a lender. So how do they plan for the differences in that as they're mapping out a plan to buy a house and working with the lender and trying to make sure that the score is at the right level compared to what Credit Karma can provide by way of information?
Thank you very much. Here we go. So no matter what company is producing your credit score, or no matter what they're producing the score for, the factors that I'm showing on this screen are all the same, or they're generally the same. They're not exactly the same. As I said, there's the PhDs making a lot of money tweaking it. But the factors are the same, and I'll go through this in a second. But the most important thing is your credit score is based on your credit report. So let me talk about the factors first, and then I'll go to the credit report. Because I think, just like I say, don't stand on the scale every day. Don't obsess about your credit score. It's more important for you to eat healthy food and get regular exercise. And it's more important for you, for a good financial future, to focus on your credit report, not your credit score. If you have a good credit report, you'll have a good score. And let me just highlight the things that you should look at and what you should work on. The number one, the big 35% here. So the most important thing is your payment history. That is, are you paying your bills, and are you paying them on time? On time. Not, if grace period means late. So you have to be paying your bills on time. That is the number one factor in determining your credit score. The next factor, which is also significant, is the amounts owed. And for the person asking the question, this is something that is absolutely going to be a factor when they're determining your creditworthiness to get a mortgage. And so the amounts owed is how much of your credit, the credit that's been extended to you, are you using? So if I have a credit card that has a $1,000 limit, how much of that balance do I have? So lenders don't like you to have a balance higher than 30%, just as a general rule. So that means if you have a $500 balance on a $1,000 credit limit, that's going to affect your credit score. Even if you're paying it, even if you're paying on time, if you have high balances, that's going to adversely affect your credit score. So one of your action plans should be to pay down these limits. And that applies both for your overall credit score. So say I have 5 credit cards. So they do it both ways. They do the total amount that you have, your total balance on all the credit cards, and they also do it on the individual credit cards. So both. So you really want to take a look at that. And this, I would strongly encourage you, if this is a problem for you, or if you need to work an action plan, to contact a housing counselor. I mean, because this is something that they can help, or your lender, if you're actively working towards a mortgage, they can help you. But they can help you. There's some free online tools put out by other cooperative extensions to help you make a plan to pay off, to reduce your debt. The next factor is the length of credit history. And so that's two things. So one thing you may not be able to affect, and that if you're younger, you're not going to have a longer credit history. You can't do anything. I assure you, if things go well, you'll get old and you'll have a longer credit history. So that's one. But the other is, and you just want to be cautious about this, and your lender should be giving you this counsel. If you have a credit, there's no magic to credit cards. So the only magic is to not overextend and to pay on time. But if you have a credit card and you've had it for a long time, don't just cancel it because your uncle told you at a party that you should only have 2 credit cards. Don't do that, because if you've had a credit card for a long time, that's a good, hopefully it's good, that's a credit history. You're showing that you were able to maintain that credit for a long time. So be careful when you're canceling credit cards. Be careful about, be thoughtful about that, because that could potentially adversely affect your credit. So again, I strongly encourage you to talk to a housing counselor if you have questions about that. Do you have another question?
Yeah, someone has a question. Is it possible to have too low of a balance on a credit card? Is there like a sweet spot?
No, 0 is good. Well, if you're starting off, if you're establishing credit, or if you have a credit card, you should use it. So if this answers that question, so go to the store. We talk about people. I'll give a simple example of somebody starting off who has a very low, perhaps has a secured credit card. So what we say is go to the store and buy something. My best example was one man who went every month and bought flowers for his wife. I think that's a great idea, and charged it, and then wait for the bill to come, and then pay it off in full. And that's the way to get good credit. Paying your bill off in full is a way to get good credit. But don't pay it off before it's due, because if you pay it off before it's due, then you will not get that positive impact on your credit report. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, please follow up. The next percentage is credit mix, and that is whether you have the bulk of your credit score, as you can see, is impacted by credit cards, because that's what most of us have. But if you have an installment loan, for example, an auto loan is an installment loan, lenders like to see that you can manage different kinds of credit. So that will positively affect your credit if you have a loan that you're paying regularly. And then the final factor, which I think that people sometimes focus on too much, is new credit and credit inquiries. So when we talk, I'll kind of break this into 2 buckets. When we talk, people worry about credit inquiries. You really shouldn't worry about credit inquiries. If you have a credit card, for example, your credit card company is going to be looking at your credit all the time. When you look at your credit report, you'll see that. If you go out for an auto loan, people will be looking at your credit. If you're buying a house, the lenders are looking at your credit. But that's okay. That's not going to negatively impact your credit, because the credit card companies, the credit reporting agencies are so smart, because they've got these PhD guys, that they say, oh, there's 5 mortgage companies looking at Cynthia Schell's credit. She's buying a house. So that's okay. So I figured that out. And as long as that activity, kind of is bucketed off this is occurring within, 30, 45 days, then I say that's fine. I'm not going to negatively impact the credit. What is going to negatively impact the credit, if they see an inquiry for Cynthia buying a new house, a new car, some furniture, getting another credit card, that's when it negatively impacts your credit. So that's, I'm sorry.
Exactly. Cynthia, we have a question about collection accounts.
Okay.
How do they impact your credit score? And also, is it best to pay those back in one lump sum, or is it better to pay them off in settlements?
Okay. With an eye on time, I'm going to give my biggest answer is going to be you really need to talk to a housing counselor because it depends on the type of debt. If you're considering buying a house, for most of the mortgage programs, they will not allow you to have any collections on your credit report, none. So you will have to pay them off. But how you pay them off, you need to, there's again, I'm gonna try to make this brief. You should talk to a housing counselor or go to government-sponsored websites such as consumerfinance.gov or Virginia Cooperative Extension or HUD. Look at what their suggestions are, because you really should negotiate. Once something's gone to collection, the person who is the company that owns your debt is willing to take less money for it. So you should be making a deal with that company. But there's different strategies for approach, and I don't want to give any simple answer because it depends on each person. But I am going to jump quickly here so that we have time for more questions to credit reports. So what you all should do immediately is go to annualcreditreport.com. So this is a .com site, and the reason why it's a .com site is because the government told the credit reporting agencies in legislation that they had to set up this site. So they own the site. The three major credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, they own the site annualcreditreport.com. But they're doing it because the government told them to. So this is not a site where you would ever have to pay any money. And this is the only site that you can go to for a free credit report. Just be careful of any other sites, because they're going to try to hook you in. They say they'll give you something for free, but they're either taking your personal financial information, or they're going to try to hook you in and sell you some other service before you get there. And right now with the pandemic, you can check all three credit reports once a week. So there's no excuses. Everybody go immediately. And I have to say, following my own advice, which I give very frequently and occasionally follow, I went and I've been doing my own, and I've discovered information that needs to be corrected. So you should go there. And an important reason to go there is because your printout, your PDF, is in color. And it will be right in your face about where the good things are and where the bad things are. So you want to see green there, and you're seeing what your potential lender's going to see. So if you have a history of missed payments, then the vendor's going to see there. And the other thing is when you look at this information, you're going to notice, and this is really important, that the credit reporting agencies, they're now tracking not only whether you paid your credit card on time every month, right? And so that includes if you're paying the minimum payment, but they're also tracking how much you pay. So I'm getting back to the person who asked that question about, what balance is good, and the answer is the smallest balance. And I'm telling you that even though they're not including that as a factor now in your credit score, they will. Because if they're collecting this information now, for sure they're going to use it in the future in order to produce a credit score. So everybody wants to get in the habit of paying their bills on time and paying the whole balance. That really should be one of your action items in your financial plan. So just to keep going, to maintain good credit, pay all your bills, pay them on time, on time, on time. No grace period. Grace period. Technically, if you have a mortgage, even though when you get your, well, in the olden days, we used to get coupon booklets, but it would say the mortgage is due on May 1st, but the late payment comes after May 10th. You are technically in default of your mortgage if you pay after the 1st. So you want to before you own a home, and certainly after you own a home, you want to get in the habit of paying these bills on time, because you know, I'm not saying that the bank's going to come after you if you pay on the 2nd, but you don't want anybody to be in that kind of situation. Don't overextend. Don't get credit when you don't need it. Don't go just because you have access to credit. That doesn't mean you should use it. It's good to have it because, as I talked briefly about your debt, your credit worthiness, that's how much of your available credit you're actually using. You really want to keep that to be as little as possible, both for your credit score, for a good credit score, and also because stuff happens, right? So if you don't have a high balance on your credit card and you have to get 4 new tires, then you can do it, right? So that's kind of a mini insurance plan if you don't have the savings. And also you want to, you know, as I said, plan for future expenses. And plan, you obviously, the only way to plan for unanticipated expenses is to have some savings. But you should be planning for expenses that you know you're going to spend. The vacations, the birthdays, the trips, you need to include that as part of your financial plan.
Excuse me, Cynthia, we have an additional question from a couple slides ago. Why is it important to check your credit score or your credit report weekly during a pandemic?
Oh, well, the reason why they changed the rules on that and made it available weekly is because with the mortgage forbearance, and forbearance means that people who had mortgages had the ability to say, I can't pay and not be penalized. It's a special program that the government put in. There was also a program for student loans where you could stop paying student loans and that wouldn't negatively impact your credit report. Well, let's just say that not everybody is following the rules, and so there were some student loan companies that were reporting people as missing their payments, even though they were legitimately not paying due to the special CARES Act legislation. So that's why the government made it available. But whatever. That's why the credit reporting agencies made it available, because government said do it. But I'm not saying check it weekly, but before the pandemic and after, hopefully, when the pandemic's over, you could only get a free credit report once a year. So then I would talk about strategies like, well, check this one, check one, and then 4 months later check another, and then 4 months later check another one. But now I say, hey, go wild, right? And then for those of you who are working on improving your credit report, one of the things about, and I'm trying to make this quick, but one of the first things that you need to do with a credit report is make sure that it's accurate. So if there's something wrong, like I found something wrong, get it off, right? And so the reason why you want to go back next week is to make sure that they really took it off. So that's why. So I'm not saying be obsessive. I gave my scale analogy, but since you have this ability to do it, you should do it. And a lot of, especially with the person who was asking about collections, you can make a deal with the collection company and they're supposed to call it closed and take it off. A lot of times that's not their priority. So this gives you the ability to follow up.
Thank you.
So in summary, you have to figure out what's important to you. You need to understand what's important to you, make a plan, and follow it. right? And you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it because Cynthia thinks it's a good idea. You're doing it because this is where you want to be in the future, and this is your path, your achievable path for how to get there. And for those of you who are in the process of buying a home, I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you. I think I was supposed to make this point before, but your lender is going to tell you that you have the ability to get a mortgage for some amount of money. You need to figure out beforehand, can you really afford that? Because the lender is just looking at the maximum amount possible, and that means you're not going on any vacations, you're not going out to dinner, you're not doing anything. If you put all your money towards your mortgage, this is the way it's going to be. And you have to think about, is that really what I want? So I strongly encourage you to develop a budget, your after house budget, that is how much you can afford in a mortgage, and also takes into account other expenses that you're going to have. Because as soon as you take that mortgage on, if you live in Northern Virginia, you'll likely have homeowners association dues, you're going to have homeowners insurance, you may have to, you may have to pay for a lawn service, or you may have to buy a lawnmower. So there's going to be a lot of expenses associated with owning a home that you're not spending now if you're renting now. So you should really develop a budget, your future budget, and make sure that this mortgage amount fits in that future budget, because you don't want to be there the first day and say, oh, holy moly, I'm way overextended, and this is no fun. You want to have nice curtains in your house. Are there, we're almost at time. I'm sorry.
Can we talk a little bit more about shopping for a lender and making sure that you have the best interest rate? How does that impact your credit score if you're going from lender to lender, checking to make sure you have the best interest rate before you accept a lender's offer?
Well, I think one of the most important things about finding a lender is finding someone who you trust and who is a lender for your specific situation, right? So if you're a first-time home buyer, you want to find a lender who wants to work with first-time home buyers, because sorry guys, first-time home buyers can be sometimes a pain in the butt because they've never been through this process before, so they don't know how it works. So you need to find a lender who works with that population. There are some, I'm trying to go quick because I see that we're almost at time. VHDA, formerly known as VHDA, now known as Virginia Housing. I encourage you to go to their site. They have lenders that work with their program, and they're primarily focused on first-time lenders. So they're a good resource. Housing counselors are a good resource. We won't tell you specific people, but we'll give you ideas of where to go, how to look. And also, look, I may think that Joe Schmo is a great lender, and I say, hey, Brandy, go to Joe Schmo, and Brandy doesn't like him. She doesn't like his cologne. Brandy can use him. I'm serious. You have to have somebody who's with you, because this person is putting you in serious debt. So I think that I'm not. The lender will help you. I know in 2 minutes I'm not going to talk about shopping around for a rate, but I think that you do need to have a lender that you trust, because the rate isn't the only factor in getting a mortgage loan, and so you want to make sure that you have what's best for you in your situation.
And Cynthia, we have one more question, and then I'm going to ask you to please tell us how we can get in contact with your organization. But the final question is, when is the best time in life to start developing a spending plan?
Now, right now, not only right now, but whoops, I think but you should, I thought I had to, oh, here we go. Of course, thank you very much, questioner and Brandy, because even after you purchase your home, so I'm strongly encouraging you to develop a budget now for your post home. But even after you buy a home, you need to keep on your budget. And especially after any life changes, getting married, getting divorced, having a baby, having an empty nester, losing a job, getting a different job. You want to go back to this plan and say, is this still right? Does this make sense? Thank you. Here I have some ways to get in touch with us. You can go to HUD.gov and look for housing counselors, and you'll see Virginia Cooperative Extension there. I have our links right here. Our email, we're on Facebook and Twitter. And if you go to, I don't see, pwcgov.org/money is the Cooperative Extension Financial Education site.
Well, this has been terrific. I know I've learned a lot, and I really appreciate you providing us with this great information. And on behalf of the attendees, we really appreciate you providing this information to us today.
Thank you very much. It was fun to talk to you today.
Likewise. Take care. Thank you to everyone who joined us today for our 10th annual Northern Virginia Housing Expo. If you would like to see more resources about the organization and actually about the event, feel free to check out the webpage and also visit the exhibit hall, and also feel free to check out the other workshops. Have a great day, and thank you for joining us.